Hi, good morning, everyone. I hope you are well in this very, very short week that we have just before the National Day holidays. Thank you for joining us today. I know some of you will be watching this later at a time that suits you, so hopefully you'll find this an informative and useful session all about CAT4. I'd like to introduce to you, we've got the lovely Miss Michelle here, our Head of Inclusion. And Michelle... Hi, Miss Michelle, you okay?
I am, thank you, yes.
Miss Michelle and I have worked very closely over the last 5 years or so looking at using CAT4 and supporting parents and teachers and students with getting the most out of CAT4 and the information that it gives us. So hopefully you will find this an informative session, and we do give you the opportunity to please use the private chat if you're online now. So not the private, sorry, on the chat there to the left. So you might be able to ask any questions or any queries that you have. And as we're going, we'll try to answer as many questions as we can. But hopefully this should provide you with a lot of information so that you'll come away quite equipped with how to understand the reports. So your class teachers emailed out the report, the CAT4 report for your child, along with a very informative letter. So please do make sure you've spent time reading that letter and then also reading through the reports. GL is a company we've worked alongside with for a long, long time. They're a fantastic company. And the reports that they give, I think they're very, very informative. They give you a lot of information. I know also teachers receive a different type of report, and we are provided with so much information. So I hope that you find those useful. So today we are going to look at, I've got my presentation here, at You're going to find out what the CAT4 assessments are and why we actually use them. You're going to find out about all the different 4 areas, the 4 batteries, and we'll have a quick look at some different types of questions. You're going to find out how to understand your parent report. I know a couple of teachers have already received a few questions, so hopefully that will clarify a bit of information. And then also explain to you what we do at school with the CAT4 information, and also how you can help your child at home with what you've got. So, what are the CAT4s and why do we use them? Now, the CAT4 test, it stands for Cognitive Abilities Test, and this is the 4th edition. And it is a sort of diagnostic assessment to help teachers understand and to help parents understand how children learn and their academic potential. It will help you guys to understand how the children think in different areas of their learning and areas that will really help to make a difference in how they learn and how they approach activities and lessons that are set in class. Normally, assessments that we look at, they focus very much on attainment in the core subjects of English, maths, and science. And CAT4 is designed to give us a much broader and rounder view of a child and their potential and how they learn. And then these results will help a teacher decide how they can best plan for your child, how to adapt and change the pace of learning, and to help support or challenge where needed, and also put in interventions if they are needed in school with either Miss Michelle's department or interventions with the class teacher. CAT4s are used by many schools in Dubai and in the UAE. CAT4 is compulsory. We need to make sure that our children are KHDA have told every school in Dubai to ensure that their children from years 2 to 6 have a CAT4 assessment. Now, CAT4 assessments generally are reliable for 2 years. So that report that you have for your child is generally viable and useful for 2 years. And then it's recommended to retake it. Now, this year, due to all the craziness of COVID and other things, we decided to retest the whole of our cohort from year 2 to 6. So your child might be in year 6, and the last time they did their CAT4 assessment would have been in year 4. But the children in year 5, they just did CAT4 assessment last year. So you should have maybe another report in your inbox that your teacher will have that will help you to be able to look at those 2 reports and compare how they differ or how similar they are. I always think that's quite interesting to look at. So KHDA recommends that all schools for children from year 2 to 6 carry out CAT4 assessment at least every 2 years. As I said, when we sent out letters before your child did CAT4 assessments, they don't require to have any previous knowledge. You can't revise or necessarily practice for the questions on CAT4. So it's quite good because everyone's starting in the same place. CAT4 also gives targets or examples of where a child will, so for year 3 to 6, what a child might achieve in their SATs if they're in the UK taking the SATs assessments. And as I said, it helps the teacher to pace and plan for how a child's going to learn and then adapt their lessons so that they can give extra support or challenge or vary the type of activity that's needed. And like I said, it's not like a maths or an English test. It's not assessing what a child has learned. It's thinking about and assessing how a child learns and how they think. So very often you will see our children looking at these questions, trying to think, oh, how does this work? They might be tilting their head around going, hang on. This is not testing their knowledge. It is a cognitive assessment. Miss Michelle, is there anything else to add to that?
No, that was perfect.
So here you go. If you have a look here on this slide, you will see that it gives you an idea of how, as a school, we use attainment. So the bottom left of this, the bottom right of this triangle where it says attainment, I'm not sure which side you're looking at, it says there, so that's where we're looking at the English, the maths, the science assessments, all the teacher judgments, all the assessments that your teacher carries out every single day in class, whether in year 2 or year 6 or they're in FS. Your teacher's continuously looking at how your child is attaining and achieving in the different learning areas. So a teacher collects that information and they add it into our school internal assessment system. And all of that helps to give our child a bit of a 360 profile, an idea of where they are academically. We also, at the top there of the triangle, we do assess a child's attitude towards learning. So we carry out various well-being surveys or censuses or PASS assessments. Now, the PASS study is something, again, that's created by GL, this company, and that helps to assess how a child learns, their attitudes to school and self. So we really do look, if a child is feeling anxious or they're feeling worried, or if they need to develop a better relationship with the teacher, or perhaps relationship with their friends, all of that can impact on how a child will learn. So we use that along with their attainment, and then the aptitude here, the CAT4 assessment, which is what we're looking at today. So that whole triangle gives a really good idea, a 360 profile of our children and what we can do best to support them.
Yeah, and I think from our side, it's just really important that we look at all of those 3 areas that Laura said. So we don't ever just look at one result. We try and look at all 3 areas, because sometimes if a child's had a bad day, if they've not slept well, that could maybe explain some of the scores from either the CAT4 assessment or the attainment, or maybe how they're feeling on that day when they're doing any wellbeing survey. So it's not just about looking at one score or one result. It's really about triangulating that data and looking at it as a 360.
And yourselves as parents, one thing can very much change how a child will approach another thing. So if they wake up late, or they're just in a bad mood, or they've fallen out with a friend, or they're just a bit tired, all of this can impact any of these different areas, as you said, Michelle. So it very much is a snapshot. And I think with everything you get, we're just trying to collect as much information to help us get a more realistic and accurate idea of our children and how they learn best and how to support them best. So the CAT4, the Cognitive Abilities Test, looks at 4 different areas, okay? So verbal reasoning with year 2, this is very much referred to thinking with words, quantitative thinking with numbers, non-verbal thinking with shape, and spatial reasoning is looking at how they look at shape and space. Now, Miss Michelle, do you want to just mention how these link to the core subjects?
Yeah, so again, this is very broad, but what we tend to say is that our verbal and non-verbal reasoning link closely with our English. Our quantitative and spatial is more closely with our maths, and then our spatial and non-verbal reasoning, they link with our science and our STEAM and art activities.
So, as parents, the report you received would have looked a little bit like this. Let me just add a little bit there. So you would have had a table, and you can't really see the table here, but on your child's report, there is a yellow band that highlights the average of where the scores would lie. Now, your teachers receive a far more detailed report of exactly where the children have scored in the different areas. But as parents, this is the most useful for you. And I think the key area there is the summary part, where it will go through exactly different strategies and advice for how you can support at home. Miss Michelle?
Yeah, like Miss Laura said, that in the school we do get like a standard age scores, but as parents, I think you just need to be looking at where your child lies within that yellow band, or maybe they're exceeding or slightly below, and looking at ways that then you can support. I guess from your side of things, we're not too concerned about the numbers. That's more for us as school to look at and support where necessary.
Yeah, and as I said, if your child has previously taken a CAT4 assessment, you should have access to their CAT4 report in your inbox from school that would have been sent out a year ago or 2 years ago. And I do think it would be very valuable, as I talked about, this being a snapshot in time. If there is something there that you think, oh, that surprises me. Again, when you're looking at these areas, particularly linking to quantitative, linking to maths or verbal, to English, if there is a surprise, definitely look back at any previous reports that you've got to think, oh, hang on, how similar is this? Is this a realistic picture? And see. And again, the average is where the average child, that yellow band, within that band, should be, they give you assurance of, where a child is achieving in those different areas with the little targets and support areas you can give at home. You do also receive, on a second page, and this is for parents from year 3 to 6, CAT4 gives an indicator of what a child might achieve in Key Stage 2, at the end of Key Stage 2, if they were in the UK taking their SATs. And again, this is just an indicator. It isn't precise. Very often we have found, actually, in VHPS that our children achieve more, a high percentage of our children achieve way more than what is indicated in the CAT4 assessments. So you can use this as a bit of a gauge. And again, they send a bit of information about what a child might achieve most likely, and then if challenged, which I always find a bit unusual, because obviously in schools we are trying to challenge children to the maximum, to the best they can. So I'd be probably looking at that if challenged as well, and how you can support. And again, this can help support you with discussions at home or with Michelle or with the class teachers of any areas that you think, okay, do we need to put extra support in, or how else can I support my child at home? When the children are in secondary school and they're taking the CAT4 assessments, these indicators are for things like GCSEs, and therefore it can really obviously impact on options and subjects that you choose to look at. But year 2 parents, you don't have this information. You're just concentrating on that first page. Miss Michelle, anything to add to that?
No, all good.
Okay. So what do the CAT4 questions look like? Now, you did see a couple of examples in the reports given, but I just thought it'd be quite important to just recap what the questions that your child came across, and then just see how would you answer them, and you can understand how a child might think as well. So, for example, looking at a non-verbal one, so thinking with shapes. The children have headphones. The assessments were taken online, and there are practice questions at the beginning of each of the 4 batteries. So the child has at least 2 practice questions per battery, per area. And this, a lovely voice, a lovely lady, speaks to the children through the headphones and explains to them how to answer these types of questions. The questions then get progressively harder as the children are working through. So example, this non-verbal one is very much the children need to decide what's similar and what's different. So if we look at this example, so you've got shapes here that they're all shaded grey. They all have 4 sides. So out of those choices, A, B, C, D, and E, the children will need to figure out which is the most similar to those 3 shapes. And obviously we can see it would be D because it's shaded grey and it also has 4 sides. When you look at those other options, that would be any of the others. But you can see how it would be quite tricky for a child, and how the children would have to really think. And I will mention also, very much in this day of our children playing computer games, and particularly something like TT Rockstars, where the children are trying to type very, very quickly, we do need to spend time, particularly with the younger children, making sure they're not too click happy at trying to be quick through it. So the teachers do make sure that child doesn't miss out questions and they're taking their time. But obviously that's tricky, particularly for our younger students. Quantitative, now thinking with numbers, again, you're trying to see the one that links most likely with the pairs. So you've got 2 to 3, 9 to 10, 6 to what? What would be the partner there? You know, so you've got the options of 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And the child would go, okay, 6 to 7. That would be the most obvious answer, as they would select that one. And the next one, so verbal questions, so would be thinking of words. Now, this is an area, I'm sure Miss Michelle will give a bit more information about this, but if a child where English isn't their first language, this might be an area where a child would score lower, because they're thinking of, and they need to have a good understanding of words and language. So the examples here, I always find this one quite a tricky one. You've got green, blue, and red, and then the children have to decide which would be the word that would go with those words. So you've got colour, crayon, paint, yellow, and rainbow. Now that's quite tricky. You know, children might think, well, they're all colours, or they could be crayons, but actually the correct answer there would be yellow. And you could imagine a child where English isn't their first language, that could cause some issues, or would explain why a result would be lower in verbal area. Anything there to add, Miss Michelle?
Yeah, and I guess really from our side, if that verbal score is a little bit lower and they are a child where English is a second language, that's not something that we worry too much about. Obviously, we were looking at the strategies and support we can put in place to develop the English language, but we would also be looking at the non-verbal score as well. So that would give us a better indication of how they may do with their English and their literacy skills if their vocabulary continues to develop. So again, if your child is learning English and that verbal score is a little bit lower, it's nothing too much to worry about at this point in time. But again, if there are concerns, you can always get in touch with myself or your class teacher.
And then the final battery here is the spatial, thinking with shapes and space. Now, this is the area that I think I am weakest at. But this is very much, as I said, ones where you might see a child doing this on the computer screen, trying to figure it out. So you have here a square, and the children have information where if this square was folded and hole punched, what would be the pattern that they would see. Very tricky, and yeah, involves proper thought there of which ones of those letters to select. And as you can see there, B is a correct answer. So yes, quite complicated thinking with shapes and space for me anyway, personally, Miss Michelle.
And me too as well.
So these are examples of the 4 batteries. Now, as a school, as I said, our teachers receive a much more detailed report. And with that will really help the class teacher to identify any underachieving areas. So if a child has performed particularly higher in one of the batteries, is that matching with what they're achieving in their subjects? So if a child, for example, has a much higher quantitative score and their math scores are a lot lower, why is there a mismatch there? And that's what a class teacher would look at. And likewise, the other way around as well. If a child is performing incredibly high in their maths, but they have a very low quantitative area, you know, a child is really, really pushing themselves to the max. And we need to recognize that and put in support. And obviously, it really helps a class teacher to think about how can they support. I see a question here, Audrey just mentioned, that the summary contents there are specifically aimed for how a parent can support at home. The class teachers receive another summary where they can support in the classroom. And Miss Michelle, after this slide, will be chatting through a few more strategies that our teachers will use in class, but also something that you can do at home to help you if you're helping with homework or approaching other tasks at home. Now, every year, group in our school has a year leader from across the school. So the year leader really looks at this CAT4 data, the bigger picture, and starts to think, oh, maybe as a cohort, maybe as a year group, is there an area that they can really help to develop or grow? Is there a need to be a bigger focus on maths because the children across the board are quite low in a quantitative area? And what actions can they take to really support and help out? Are there variations across different classes? And again, how can we support? The inclusion department, Miss Michelle's department, goes even deeper at the numbers, and they really look at, those children that are at risk. Can you explain this a bit more, Miss Michelle?
Yeah. So at the moment, we're just looking through the scores. And like we said before, we're looking at all of the data. So with their attainment and what they've been doing over the years, and maybe taking into account last year's CAT4 data as well. And if there are some children that we feel maybe need a little bit of an extra support, we will be looking at ways that we can put that support in place. So that might be in-class interventions. It could be some interventions from the inclusion team, or as well, we're looking at the ways that we can modify how the lessons and the content is delivered. So that would be our in-class modification as well. All of this is currently happening now behind the scenes, and we're looking at building those that picture up. And we're also looking at, as I mentioned before, the non-verbal to the verbal deficit. So again, as we said, some children where English is an additional language, we may see that there is a discrepancy there. But there are some other children as well where English isn't there, where English is their first language, and there is a discrepancy. So what we want to be doing then is looking at ways that we can help to develop those verbal skills so that they can reach their true potential, really, with their attainment side of things. So the class teachers are provided with additional strategies and support. They're already looking at this CAT4 data now and categorising their children in their class as to which intervention support they need to be doing, and that is then going to obviously tailor into the classroom activities.
And again, as Michelle said, we've been using this information in the school for at least the last 6 years. So we would be using past CAT4 information as well to make sure we're supporting our children, not only the CAT4s that were taken in this term. So we also have our core subject leaders. So we've got Miss Jenny for science, or Mr. Alex for maths, or Miss Danielle for English. And they look very much particularly at those 4 batteries and how that will impact in their subject area, and really, again, help to target support or resources that might help children more in those different batteries. Our specialist teachers also have passed on information from the inclusion department of how they can support, maybe in PE or in ICT or in music, and how the CAT4 results can help impact in their subjects as well. And then Miss Michelle and Miss Sasha and myself, and Mr. Rothwell and Mr. Dowman, we all sit together and we look at a whole school. Now, KHDA and DSIB, when they visit, they are very interested in how a school is using the CAT4 reports and the data that's from that, and how we are working to try and help all teachers and all parents be able to utilize and get the maximum out of the information that we get. So we compare past CAT4 results, and we really make sure that all the triangulation is taking part and that everybody is fully supporting in all areas. I can see Miss Michelle, before we move on, Judith here was questioning, and I know this would be something you'd be able to answer.
Can we develop these areas with targeted moves that develops the child's nervous system, body moves, left body moves? Yes. So again, that would link in closely with some of that would link closely if there is some difficulties with the vestibular system, and that would link in with your spatial scores. So if there are scores which are lower in the spatial battery, we would look at trying to develop some of that motor coordination communication, some of the problem solving, some of their awareness in space. So doing some of the gross motor movements, the midline crossing movements, which you was talking about with like the crossing body from one side to the other, and developing laterality, so their left and their right side, that would help to develop the spatial side.
Thanks, Miss Michelle. She's such an expert in these areas. Right. I will, before we move on to talk about some strategies and areas to help, I will also mention, I think Year 2 parents, if you're listening or watching, Year 2, historically, we didn't carry out CAT4 assessments with Year 2 children. Last year it was made mandatory from KHDA that we did carry these out. The reason why previously we haven't done this before is that we have found that the results, the younger the children are, the results are less reliable. I know Miss Michelle will vouch for this as well. And as the children get older, these results are far more accurate and reliable. So I think Year 2 parents, if you're reading these and you're thinking, oh, I would just pause and you have this as an extra layer of information about your child, but do take away and think they are less reliable the younger the child is. Is that right, Miss Michelle?
Yeah, definitely. And I think we've seen that firsthand looking at like last year's Year 2 CAT4 results. And now obviously they're in Year 3, the scores are a lot better across the cohort. So we can see that validity is much stronger when they reach Year 3. So I think, like Miss Laura is saying, we can just take it as a snapshot and a building block really to look at where we need to be heading. But please don't worry too much if the scores are a little bit lower. We're seeing that across all of Year 2.
Okay, thanks, Michelle. I think that's important to make sure that parents, you do hear that. Okay, so looking at some strategies here. Now, we've got information on the 4 batteries, and Miss Michelle will talk about what it might look like if a child has received quite a low result, and what that might look like at home or in the classroom, and then what we can do and what you can do at home to support. So, Michelle, for verbal.
Yeah, so our verbal is obviously our language side, it's our expression. What we might see in the classroom is if they're struggling in some of the group discussions, if they're struggling with some of the auditory memory, so if they find it hard to retain a lot of information, or to follow multi-step instructions, if a teacher is giving steps out, that might be a little bit trickier for them. As well, the reason aloud with carpet and group discussion. So if they're on, obviously we're not on the carpet at the moment, but if they're doing a class discussion in their chair, and they're talking maybe to the person next to them, that might be something that they find a little bit more challenging. So in terms of the support that we can put in place, and you'll see that there is a theme that goes through all of the 4 areas, and that's really trying to support children as much as possible using like the visual system, is that we want to try and provide as many visuals as we can to help them succeed. So whether or not then if they are doing a discussion about a text, can that be modelled with a picture so that they've got some key information on there that they can help with their memory. We do a lot of chunking, so really trying to give instructions that are short and specific, so trying not to give too much information. Again, visual checklists can be used to help with that. So some children might benefit from having like now and next, so that they can tick that off and be more independent, so they're not always relying on that teacher or the adult in the classroom to come and to repeat the instruction. We try to use a lot of mind mapping as well, which is just another fancy word for visual. So again, just having key points. So a lot of the children lower down, maybe in Year 2, would maybe do talk for writing. So they're drawing some of the pictures when they're developing their story. So then they use that so that they can retell tell a story verbally, and then that also then transfers into their writing. Lots of use of ICT, which obviously a lot of the children are using now since our lockdown. They've got a lot more proficient with being able to kind of have things on their computer screen to help as a visual aid. Highlighting key information as well. So later on, if they're older, maybe in years 4, 5 and 6, especially if they're looking at reading and reading comprehension, children might benefit from highlighting text so that they're getting key information out. And I think this is a really good time to start to encourage that now, because that really is the start of our revision skills, which we will need when we go into secondary school. We've also got on there, access to keywords or to vocabulary, so that they're exposed to that vocabulary and they can then start to use that into their writing. We also have our WAGLs as well, so that's what a good one looks like. So the teachers are always providing examples of what the children are working towards, so they've got that model there and can use similar ideas to help develop their language and their written work.
As a school, we found WAGLs to be incredibly valuable. I mean, imagine if you were you bought boxed furniture from IKEA and you didn't know what the end product was going to look like and you were trying to put it together. It's absolutely crucial that our children know where they're aiming. As adults, we need to know what a good one looks like so we know where to work towards. So at home, if you're supporting these areas, are definitely something where you can support at home using some of those strategies and helping your child to be able to achieve in the best way that works for them. Now, looking at the next one here, Miss Michelle, nonverbal.
Yeah, so our nonverbal.
Yeah, sorry. No, so nonverbal links to in the curriculum.
Yep, so our nonverbal would link into the curriculum across really all areas. So our maths, English, our science. It's also can be used as a general for kind of their attainment in terms of this is what they could achieve. So that is a good score that we look at. And if a child has a lower nonverbal score, then they may face difficulties with their organisation, some of their problem-solving skills. We may find that they maybe are able to learn a concept, for example, in maths, but then find it hard to generalise that and put that into maybe another subject, or making those connections where if one step was slightly changed, are they able to then look on prior learning and go, oh yeah, that's what I need to do. I can figure that out, rather than learning things as a step-by-step approach. And again, the challenges would be that they could find then new tasks and new learning a bit trickier and need things to be broken down. So in terms of strategies, again, it's the verbal and visual supports. So again, our instructions need to be short and simple. I know as teachers, we try not to talk too much. I know that that's exactly what we're both doing at the moment, but we're trying to help with putting our visuals on here so that you've got this information. That's definitely what our teachers are doing. As well, when teachers are talking, they would give maybe extra clues by maybe picking up sheets that they can be using or pointing to the board. And that's the same as parents when you're at home and you're giving those instructions. Maybe, in the morning it's about getting ready and you're pointing to your bag and the shoes. It's giving those extra clues so that they're getting more information to make them more successful. We're saying as well, just in terms of general organisation, even having things on the paper that's already there for them, so they don't have to actually work out what they need to do. So having tables or boxes so that then the child just needs to fill that in and it's already organised. That can really help in terms of initiation of task and just getting them started. Association maps, so again that's linking in with our visual skills. So maybe having a picture of say a tree, and then having different things that associate with that. So would that be the sun and the water? Could it be leaves, different types of trees? So to help then with their language when they're getting things down. So we've also got on there flow charts and cycles, sequencing activities. That's a good one as well. So that can be really useful from a English point of view and from a science. You know, can they put things in a sequence if they're really struggling to break things down? Are they able to then, with a picture of a sequence in front of them, able to do then that step by step? And you can also use that when children are retelling stories, progressive glossaries and dictionaries. So again, I know that you can't see it at the moment, but sometimes the children in the school, at the front or the back of their book, they will have keywords or key vocabulary that they can then use. And that is very specific then to that child. And we've also got our knowledge organisers as well that can help with that information.
Thanks, Miss Michelle. And the next battery here is quantitative support. So where this links to maths, here it comes, and how we can support and what that looks like in class or at home.
Yep, so this might be difficulties with learning times tables, so there's the maths facts and the concepts, or possibly we might find some difficulties in the science. And really what this is about recognising those patterns, how all the numbers work together. So they're the things that we may be looking for if they have got a lower scoring quantitative. Are we seeing this in the classroom and in the different lessons like maths and science? So how do we support that? So again, lots of things to be broken down step by step. It's really trying to highlight as well, so using those waggles so that they can really see what those clear patterns are and how that then links in with the maths problem. Use of knowledge organisers to help learn facts and concepts. So there's just some things, you know, with maths and with science that they're just key things that we need to know. So a lot of the knowledge organisers will just be about that rote learning, being able to practice your times tables to help then be able to transfer that knowledge into maths lessons where the word problems come into play. If they've got that knowledge there with the times tables, then hopefully they will be able to see and start to transfer that into some of the deeper questions. We'll need to help to support and link learning together. So whereas then they might be able to know their times tables, but if they're then faced with a word problem, are they able to link that together? If they're not, how can we help them to do that? So again, using highlighters to pick out those key words, those key vocabulary. So, you know, adding together, equals, more, plus, those are all the same words for the same thing, but sometimes that's what trips up our children. So it's been making sure that they explicitly know what that means and what then that can look like in a maths lesson. Lots of practice and repetition, and as well we've said using a kinesthetic and a visual approach. So kinesthetic is obviously touch and having those manipulatives, those objects there, so that they can really see. So if they're trying to do a maths problem, can they have access to cubes or to Dean's, Numicon, to help them really understand what that value and what that number is, rather than it being just something that's written down.
I mean, obviously at home you won't have access necessarily to these sorts of things, but whether you were using buttons or blocks or tins of food or anything to help your child, I think it's having that hands-on physical access to those resources. And the final battery here, the spatial, my weakness, Miss Michelle, the spatial one.
Right, totally. So spatial is again linked in with, you know, this links in with our PE, with our science, and with our math skills. And it is that ability to solve problems. We may see that they're struggling to learn some of the times tables or the maths formulas. Presentation and organisation may be a little bit trickier, may find it harder in PE, for example, being able to find a space or to pack their bags, or, you know, we're seeing it a little bit more in the classroom now when they've just got this little table. Are they able to organise themselves so they can get the right things ready at home? Can they pack their bag? Can they get the right things ready for the next next day of school. And that's really definitely some of the things that you can help with in terms of that organisation side, is trying to make them be more independent in terms of, right, this is your job now, you need to get your bag ready, you need to get things organised for the next day, and seeing if they can get themselves organised in the morning. So in terms of additional support, what we do in school is, again, there's the shorter instructions, verbal and visual supports, looking at checklists as well. So sometimes our children may have like 3 or 4 things that they need to be doing. So if they're struggling to organise themselves or remember all the information, just having those written down so they can tick them off themselves can really help. Again, having boxes or tables drawn, reducing the amount of information on worksheets. So sometimes children can get overwhelmed if they're presented with just like a page of questions that they need to do. So even just saying, okay, you need to do these first 3 questions, just can really help with their organisation and getting them to go with that. Highlighting, again, is a great way for them to pull out key pieces of information, access to our word maps and word banks, and then opportunities as well to demonstrate work orally. So we're not always saying that they need to write things down if they struggle with the handwriting side. We do look at a lot of different ways that they can record their work. So we can look at them recording themselves on Seesaw, having a scribe, drawing pictures, kind of whatever works for them.
Brilliant. Thanks, Miss Michelle. That's the end of the presentation, but I will make sure that on the app there is not only, obviously, you'll have the link to watching this again if you want to, or but I'll make sure that there'll be this presentation will be available, because I know as a parent at home, it's the sort of thing that I'd want to have nearby and on hand to be able to help my child with the areas that would help him more at home. So hopefully you'll find that useful. Miss Michelle, thank you so much for your expert knowledge and for sharing that with us all. Please do, parents, we'll be coming to an end to this now, but please do, if you have any questions there, please do use the comments box or ask a question now whilst we're here. Otherwise, I would say, look again at that report. Please read that report. Think, okay, does this match my child? Does this match what I see, how they're producing in either academic or at home? And is this matching? Is this matching my child? And if you're having real concerns, then yes, please do email Miss Michelle. She's only one person there, Miss Michelle. Her email is inclusion@bhprimary.com, or your class teacher. And they will try and help you. But I also think you do need to feel very rest assured that the class teacher has this information. The class teacher is using this information to help your child grow and be supported in those different batteries. And I would just take that as an extra layer of information about your child. I think it's so important to just keep grabbing all that information. We've said that's fine to do. You can email her. But please don't inundate her too much. And I'm glad you found this useful. As a parent, as I said, I think it's just so useful to have another bit of information about your child. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you, Miss Michelle. Thank you, Mr. Rothwell in the background there, for making sure this ran smoothly. And guys, have a wonderful long weekend. Happy National Day. And yes, and nearly at the Christmas break. 1 more week to go after this. Thank you very much. And I hope to see you soon. Thanks, Miss Michelle.
Bye.